I knew my wife was cheating on me, but I had no proof. That is, until I received a bank notification about a strange purchase at a hotel, on the same day she was working late. Instead of causing a scene, I decided to play the long game. And the ending turned out to be much worse than she could have imagined. Sarah had always been the perfect wife. At least, that's what I thought. Her work as a nurse with night shifts, taking care of our kids, and the smile that made me feel like the luckiest man in the world. We'd been married for 8 years, and I still looked at her the way I did when we first met at a mutual friend's barbecue in Portland. I'd never been the jealous type, trust was the foundation of our relationship. But over the past few months, something changed. It started small. She'd take her phone to the bathroom, turn it face down when I walked into the room, and password protect apps that were never locked before. When I'd ask about her day, her answers became vague and rehearsed. The sparkle in her eyes when she looked at me had dimmed, replaced by something I couldn't quite identify. Guilt, perhaps. Working late again? I asked one Tuesday evening when she called to say she wouldn't be home for dinner. Yeah, we're short-staffed at the hospital. Dr. Kaplan asked if I could cover for Monica. I should be home by midnight, Sarah replied, her voice slightly higher than usual. A telltale sign she wasn't being truthful. No problem. I'll leave a plate in the microwave, I said, keeping my tone casual despite the knot forming in my stomach. That night, as I sat alone in our kitchen staring at the untouched lasagna, my phone pinged with a notification. Our joint bank account showed a charge of $237 at the Meridian Hotel downtown. The timestamp was 7:42 p.m., exactly when Sarah should have been short-staffed at the hospital. I didn't confront her when she came home smelling of unfamiliar cologne, claiming exhaustion and heading straight for the shower. Instead, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Over the next few weeks, I noticed patterns. Every Tuesday and occasionally Thursday, she'd work late. The bank statements showed small charges at bars, restaurants, and twice more at the Meridian. Her scrubs no longer smelled of antiseptic but carried traces of a woody cologne I didn't recognize. One night, when she was in deep sleep after claiming another exhausting shift, I carefully picked up her phone from the nightstand. I didn't know her passcode, but I didn't need to. Her sleeping face was enough to unlock it using Face ID. My hands trembled as I opened her messages, emails, and social media accounts. Nothing suspicious. She was too careful for that. But then I checked her photos. And there they were, neatly organized in a hidden folder named Reference Materials, that would look innocuous to anyone not looking for evidence. My wife with a man I'd never seen before. In the Meridian's elegant restaurant, his hand on her thigh under the table. In what appeared to be a hotel room, her laughing in his arms. A selfie in a bathroom mirror, his hand possessively around her waist while she tilted her head back against his shoulder, eyes closed in contentment. The final photo felt like a physical blow, Sarah and this stranger, both in scrubs, standing outside the hospital where she worked. He wore a patient wristband. The timestamp was from 3 months ago. I didn't wake her screaming. I didn't throw her phone against the wall. Instead, I methodically took screenshots of everything, sent them to my email, then deleted the email from her sent folder. I carefully placed her phone back exactly as I'd found it and laid awake until dawn, planning. If Sarah wanted to destroy what we'd built, I'd make sure she lost everything else in the process. The next morning, I kissed her goodbye as usual, told her I loved her, and went to work at my job in financial services. But instead of focusing on client portfolios, I began building a strategy of my own. Phase 1: Financial Isolation. Sarah had no idea that I'd opened a separate account 6 months ago after receiving a significant bonus. It was meant to be a surprise fund for the lake house we'd been dreaming of buying. Now, it would serve a different purpose. Over the next month, I gradually transferred money from our joint savings into my private account, careful to keep the withdrawals small enough not to trigger her attention. We had been saving for a down payment on a larger home, nearly $87,000 accumulated over years of careful budgeting. Every few days, another $1,000 would disappear, moved to an account she had no access to. I maintained all appearances of normalcy. We still had date nights where I'd watch her check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. We still made love occasionally, though her mind seemed elsewhere. I played the role of the oblivious, trusting husband perfectly. Phase 2, Documentation. I hired a private investigator, paid in cash from my secret account. Within 2 weeks, he provided me with dozens of photos of Sarah and her lover, whom I now knew was Dr. Jason Kaplan, entering and exiting the Meridian, sharing intimate dinners, and kissing in his car. The investigator also discovered that Kaplan had been admitted to the hospital as a patient 3 months ago with kidney stones, which is presumably when their affair began. Most crucially, the investigator found that Kaplan was married with 2 children. And unlike me, he wasn't planning to leave his wife. I also learned something that made my plan even more powerful. The hospital where Sarah worked had a strict policy prohibiting relationships between staff and current or former patients within a 1-year window. Violation was grounds for immediate termination and potential reporting to the nursing board. Sarah's career, which she'd built over a decade of hard work, was about to collapse. Phase 3, Legal Preparation. I consulted with the 3 top divorce attorneys in our city, ultimately retaining Miranda Jeffries, known for her ruthless efficiency in high-conflict cases. I showed her all the evidence I'd gathered. With this documentation of infidelity in the financial records showing she's been using your joint funds to finance her affair, we can file for divorce under favorable terms, Miranda explained. The fact that she's jeopardized her career through this relationship also works in our favor regarding any support claims. I signed the initial paperwork but told Miranda to hold off filing until I gave the word. I wanted everything in place before the strike. Phase 4, Emotional Preparation. This was perhaps the hardest phase. I had to detach myself from the woman I'd loved for nearly a decade. Each night as I watched her text him while sitting next to me on the couch, each morning as she kissed me goodbye before meeting him, I forced myself to replace heartbreak with resolve. I spent time with our mutual friends, subtly hinting at troubles in our marriage, laying groundwork for what was to come. I reconnected with my support system, ensuring I'd have people to lean on when everything exploded. After 2 months of meticulous planning, the joint account held exactly $500, enough that she wouldn't immediately notice the missing savings, but not enough to support herself when everything fell apart. The night before I planned to execute, Sarah called to say she'd be home late again. I told her I understood, that I'd see her when she got home, and that I loved her. The last part wasn't a lie. Despite everything, part of me still loved the woman I thought she was. That night, I laid out everything on our dining room table: the divorce papers, the bank statements, the photos from the investigator, and a letter I'd written detailing exactly how and when I'd discovered her betrayal. Beside them, I placed a single hotel key card from the Meridian, a souvenir I'd acquired by booking the same room where she'd betrayed our vows. When I heard her key in the lock at 11:43 p.m., I was sitting calmly at the table, hands folded in front of me. "Mark? Why are you still up?" she asked, freezing when she saw my expression and the papers on the table. "Sit down, Sarah," I said quietly. She hesitated, then slowly sank into the chair across from me, her eyes darting nervously between my face and the papers she couldn't quite make out. "What's going on?" Her voice trembled slightly. Without speaking, I turned her phone face up on the table and pressed my finger to the home button, unlocking it. I'd added my fingerprint to her phone weeks ago while she slept. I opened the hidden folder of photos and placed the phone in front of her. All color drained from her face. "Mark, I can explain." "No need," I interrupted, my voice eerily calm. "I think Dr. Kaplan has explained enough. Or should I call him Jason? You two seem quite intimate in these." I slid the investigator's photos across the table. "Especially this one, taken yesterday when you were working late. Her hands shook as she looked at the images. How long have you known? Long enough to do this. I showed her our bank statement with the $500 balance. The rest is gone. To a place you can't access. Her eyes widened in panic. You can't do that. That's our money. Was our money. Just like this was our marriage. I slid the divorce papers toward her. My attorney will file these tomorrow. You'll be served formally at work. I paused, watching realization dawn on her. Oh, and about work, the hospital board received an anonymous email with evidence of your relationship with a former patient. The timing violates their ethics policy. She gasped, truly understanding the extent of what was happening. You would destroy my career. You destroyed our family, I replied evenly. I'm just making sure there are consequences. What about Jason? She asked, suddenly desperate. Does his wife know? I smiled without warmth. She will by morning. I arranged for her to receive everything tomorrow. Though from what my investigator learned, he has no intention of leaving her for you. He was quite clear about that when discussing you with his friend at the golf club last weekend. Sarah's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I made a mistake, Mark. We can fix this. Please, think about the kids. I have thought about them. That's why I've already filed for primary custody, with evidence that your schedule with Dr. Kaplan makes you unavailable for proper parenting time. She stood suddenly, anger replacing shock. You've been planning this for months. Acting normal while plotting to destroy me. Yes, I admitted. Much like you've been planning rendezvous with your lover while I made dinner for our children. I stood up, gathered my keys and a small overnight bag I'd packed earlier. I'll be staying elsewhere tonight. You have until tomorrow evening to pack your essentials. After that, the locks will be changed. As I walked toward the door, she called after me, her voice breaking. Where am I supposed to go? You've taken everything. I turned back one last time. Perhaps the Meridian has vacancies. Room 412 seemed to be your favorite. The next morning, I received 3 text messages from Sarah, each more desperate than the last, begging for a chance to explain, to make amends. I didn't respond. By afternoon, she'd called 17 times. By evening, when I returned home with our children after taking them out for the day to shield them from the worst of it, her things were gone from our bedroom. That night, Sarah's sister called me, furious but also confused. How could you do this to her? She demanded. She made a mistake, but this scorched earth approach. Taking all the money. Getting her fired. What kind of monster are you? Ask her what kind of wife she was, I replied calmly. Ask her how long she'd been lying, using our money to fund her affair, putting her job at risk for a man who was using her. Then ask me again who the monster is. 2 weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah had moved in with her parents in Ohio. She'd been terminated from the hospital and was struggling to find work, her professional reputation damaged by rumors of ethical violations. Dr. Kaplan had apparently reconciled with his wife, denying the seriousness of his relationship with Sarah. As for me, I felt hollow. The revenge I'd so carefully orchestrated had gone exactly as planned. Sarah had lost everything, her marriage, her home, her job, her lover, and full access to our children. I'd won completely. Yet as I sat alone in our house, now just my house, surrounded by the remnants of a life we'd built together, I wondered if winning felt the way I thought it would. The children asked about their mother daily, their innocent confusion more painful than any betrayal. The lake house fund still sat untouched, victory spoils from a war I never wanted to fight. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I wonder if there had been another way. But then I remember her face in those photographs, happy, carefree, in love with someone else while living a lie with me, and I know I couldn't have continued being the fool she took me for. Was it worth it? I still don't know. But as I watch the "for sale" sign go up in our front yard, preparing to move us somewhere new, somewhere without memories of Sarah in every room, I tell myself that sometimes the most complete victory feels nothing like winning at all.